Before we dive into a tale of hidden eyes and unexpected heroes, hit that like button if you believe a single act of courage, no matter how small, can reshape destinies. Now, settle in and enjoy. 8-year-old Maya Vance had learned a vital lesson in her young life. A lesson whispered through the echoing halls of 3 previous foster homes: watch before you speak. Watching had been her shield, her silent tutor teaching her which adults wore their hearts on their sleeves, and which ones offered smiles as cold as winter frost. Now, a fragile silhouette in the grand doorway of Julian Thorne's home office, she watched again. Her adoptive father, a man barely 30, yet already a self-made titan in the cybersecurity world, sat ramrod straight at his expansive mahogany desk. The cool cerulean glow of his monitor painted his sharp features a stark contrast to the warm afternoon sun slanting through the towering windows. This light carved long dancing shadows across a room that thrummed with the quiet hum and rhythmic blink of advanced technology. A digital heartbeat. Julian, his fingers a blur across the keyboard, was deep in a headset conversation about encryption algorithms and impenetrable security protocols. To the world, he was a genius. To Maya, 6 months into her new life, in his sprawling, opulent suburban home, he remained an enigma. A well-intentioned stranger who'd performed a grand gesture of kindness by adopting her, yet still felt as distant as a star. She often felt like a guest, perpetually on the verge of being politely asked to depart. Julian provided everything: a bedroom straight from a storybook enrollment in the finest school, a galaxy of toys she'd only ever dreamed of. But these provisions were managed with the same detached efficiency he applied to his business ledgers. All good intent, yet lacking a crucial warmth. Maya's small fingers nervously traced the ornate doorframe. She clutched a vital secret, a worry that twisted her stomach into knots. But every time she'd tried to broach anything of substance with Julian, his gaze seemed to pass right through her, as if she were another abstract problem to be solved with resources and meticulous planning. The disembodied voices on Julian's conference call droned on about firewalls and data fortresses. Maya shifted her slight weight from one foot to the other, a silent sentinel waiting to be noticed. 10 minutes ticked by. Then an inexplicable urge propelled her forward. Later, she wouldn't be able to articulate what spurred her courage. Perhaps it was the way the late afternoon sun slicing through the blinds caught a pinprick of unnatural light glinting from behind the oversized abstract painting Evelyn had gifted Julian last month. Perhaps it was the echo of her own mother's voice, a cherished memory whispering that truth outweighed politeness. Or perhaps it was simply that 8-year-old hearts often perceive truths that 30-year-old minds cluttered with complexities have long since forgotten. Maya approached Julian's imposing chair and gave his sleeve a gentle, hesitant tug. He raised a single finger, the universal adult semaphore for wait, his eyes still locked on the screen. But Maya had waited an eternity. She tugged again, a fraction more insistent. "Just a moment, sweetheart," Julian murmured, his focus unbroken. This time Maya didn't wait. She leaned in close, her breath warm against his ear, and whispered the words that would detonate his carefully constructed world. "There's a camera in your office, and it's not yours." The effect was instantaneous, electric. Julian's fingers froze mid-keystroke. His entire body went rigid as if jolted by an invisible current. The executive on the call continued to prattle about quarterly projections, but Julian heard only the reverberating echo of those 9 devastating words from the small girl beside him. "Gentlemen, I need to call you back." He managed, his voice strained abruptly, ending the meeting without a shred of explanation. The sudden silence in the room was immense, broken only by the soft whir of electronics and the thunderous drumming of Julian's own heart. He swiveled his chair, truly looking at Maya, perhaps for the very first time since she'd arrived. Her usually quiet, observant brown eyes now blazed with an undeniable urgency. What did you say?" he asked, though her words had seared themselves into his mind. "There's a camera in your office." Maya repeated, her small hand pointing with unwavering certainty towards the painting above his bookshelf, the one with the ostentatious gilt frame. "Behind the gold. I've seen it blink at night when you're not here." Julian's gaze followed her pointing finger to the expensive oil painting Evelyn Reed, his fiancée, had insisted on acquiring for him. A touch of beauty to inspire your genius, darling. She'd purred her smile, as dazzling as it was disarming. Every successful man needs an aesthetically pleasing environment. His mouth went dry. Puzzle pieces sharp and unwelcome began to click into place with terrifying mechanical precision. Evelyn's recent, almost forensic interest in his work schedule, her new habit of tidying his office while he was on calls, the uncanny way she always seemed to materialize with coffee, and perfectly timed kisses when he was working late. "How long?" he asked Maya, his voice a raw whisper. "How long have you been watching it?" "Since she hung it up," Maya stated simply. "I use my tablet. I scan for signals sometimes when I can't sleep. There are lots in the house now. But that one's different. It's not on our network." Julian stared at this child, this slip of a girl who had just capsized his entire reality with a single sentence. In 6 months, they'd barely scratched the surface of a real conversation. He'd provided Nanny's prestigious schools every conceivable toy. But he'd never truly listened. He'd never imagined that behind those quiet, watchful eyes lay a mind sharp enough to detect sophisticated surveillance equipment that he, a cybersecurity expert, had completely missed. The enormity of her revelation began to settle cold and heavy in his chest. If there was a camera, if someone was watching, if Evelyn was involved, the revolutionary security algorithm he'd been painstakingly developing, potentially worth hundreds of millions, resided on the very computer he used daily, in this very room. "Maya," he said, and for the first time he saw her, not as a responsibility, not as a charitable act, but as a person, as the person who might have just saved him from a catastrophe he'd been utterly blind to. "We need to talk." Maya's revelation hung in the air thick as smoke from a newly ignited fire. Julian pushed back from his desk, his mind a maelstrom of implications, while the 8-year-old girl who had potentially saved his empire waited with quiet patience. "Show me," he said finally, his voice hoarse. "Show me everything." For the first time since she'd set foot in his house, Maya smiled. Not the polite, guarded smile she reserved for adults, but a genuine radiant beam. Someone was finally listening. She retrieved her tablet from the hallway console table, her small fingers dancing across the screen with a surprising fluid confidence. Julian watched a knot of anxiety tightening in his gut, yet utterly fascinated as she navigated through applications he didn't even recognize. "I learned from watching you," she explained, pulling up a signal detection program. "When you were fixing the router last month, I downloaded it. My room felt buzzy at night." The tablet screen bloomed with a network map of their home. Julian recognized his own devices, computers, phones, smart home systems, his own security cameras. But then other signals appeared alien and ominous, making his blood run cold. "There," Maya pointed to a cluster of angry red dots. "These showed up after Evelyn started visiting more. This big one is behind your painting. This smaller one is in the living room inside that crystal vase she brought. And this one," she scrolled, revealing the master bedroom, "is in your nightstand." Julian's world tilted precariously. The woman he was falling in love with, the woman he'd been on the verge of proposing to, had been systematically bugging his home. Every private conversation, every business call, every intimate moment, recorded, transmitted. To whom, "How long have you known?" he asked, amazed at the steadiness of his own voice. 3 weeks. Maya said, her voice soft. "I kept trying to tell you, but—" She trailed off, but the unspoken hung between them. He'd been too engrossed in work, too captivated by Evelyn's intoxicating presence. "Tell me about Evelyn," he urged. "What have you seen?" Maya's expression turned serious, that familiar, watchful quality returning a look he now understood, as her mind replaying events with chilling clarity. Children of the system, he was beginning to realize, learned to observe details most adults overlooked. Their survival had once hinged on it. "She comes here when you're not home sometimes," Maya began. "She has a key. But she always acts surprised when I see her, like she forgot I'd be here. She says she's cleaning or organizing, but she never actually cleans anything." Julian's hands clenched. He'd given Evelyn a key 3 months prior, a gesture that had felt momentous romantic. She'd wept, claiming no one had ever trusted her so profoundly. "She goes through your office," Maya continued. "Not just looking, photographing. She has this tiny camera smaller than a phone. I saw her take pictures of papers on your desk. She always puts them back exactly." "What else?" "She asks me questions." Maya's voice dropped lower. "About your schedule when you work late, about your friends. She makes it sound like she's just being nice, trying to get to know me. But foster kids learn to tell when adults are fishing." The words struck Julian like physical blows. Every casual inquiry, every seemingly innocent question Evelyn had posed about his work, his business associates, his routines, it had all been intelligence gathering. And she'd used Maya, an 8-year-old already scarred by abandonment, as an unwitting informant. "There's something else," Maya said, her brown eyes meeting his unwavering. "I think someone else is helping her." "What do you mean?" "Marcus comes by sometimes when you're traveling. He and Evelyn, they meet in your office. They whisper a lot, look at papers. Last week I heard him say something about making sure the timeline matches the product launch." Marcus Holloway, Julian's CFO, one of his oldest friends. They'd built the company from the ground up, shared dreams, weathered storms. If Marcus was involved... Julian's rational mind recoiled. These were seismic accusations against people he loved, trusted implicitly. Yet the evidence of sophisticated surveillance in his own home detected by this child was irrefutable. "Maya," he said, choosing his words carefully. "Why didn't you just ask me about the devices? Why investigate on your own?" She looked down at her tablet, suddenly appearing achingly young. "Because adults don't usually believe kids, especially kids like me." She paused, a shadow crossing her face. "And because I thought maybe you already knew. Maybe it was part of your security and I was just being paranoid." That admission shattered something within Julian. This brilliant, observant child had shouldered this terrifying discovery alone for weeks, torn between trusting her own instincts and the fear of being dismissed, or worse, of accusing the very man who'd given her a home. She'd been protecting him while simultaneously shielding herself from potential disappointment. "I believe you," he said, his voice firm, with a conviction that surprised even himself. "And I am so sorry I didn't listen sooner." Maya's smile this time was luminous. "So what do we do now?" For the first time in their 6 months together, Julian looked at Maya not as a responsibility, but as a partner. Her insight had already proven more valuable than his entire security team. "Now," he said, a new resolve hardening his gaze, "we figure out exactly what they're after, and we stop them." Trust is often forged in the unlikeliest of fires. Think about a time when someone's unexpected wisdom or strength became your lifeline. The next morning dawned gray and drizzling, mirroring the oppressive weight of secrets that now saturated Julian's home. He'd stared at the ceiling all night, his mind a frantic chessboard of implications, while Evelyn slept seemingly peacefully beside him. Every breath she took felt like a carefully constructed lie, every unconscious touch a betrayal. Maya found him in the kitchen at dawn, dark circles etched under his eyes, mechanically stirring a coffee he wouldn't drink. She was already dressed for school, her small backpack slung over one shoulder, but her expression told him she'd slept no better. "We need help," she stated, no preamble, settling onto a bar stool. "I've been thinking. If Marcus is involved, we can't trust anyone from your company. And if Evelyn suspects, we know she might destroy evidence. Or disappear." Julian marveled again at her clarity. He, a 30-year-old magnate, had built an empire on strategic thinking. Yet Maya at 8, with no formal training, had instantly grasped the core dilemma. "Who do you suggest?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Mrs. Albright," Maya said, without hesitation. "She's been with your family since before you even started the company. She sees everything in this house but people. They treat her like she's invisible." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Maya's face. "And she's the only adult here who's ever really listened to me." Mrs. Albright, formerly Chen, had been the Thorne family's fastidious property manager for 15 years. After Julian's parents' tragic death in a car accident 5 years ago, he'd kept her on partly from loyalty, partly because she ran his sprawling household with a quiet, unobtrusive efficiency that freed him to conquer the tech world. At 69, Mrs. Albright had witnessed 3 generations of Thornes, their triumphs, their follies. More importantly, as Maya noted, she was one of the few who treated the child like a person, not a project. "Mrs. Albright, it is," Julian decided. "Can you ask her to meet us in the library after school? Tell her it's important, but don't say why over the phone." Maya nodded, the solemnity in her eyes, showing an understanding of operational security that would impress a seasoned agent. She hopped off the stool. At the door, she paused. "Julian." Her voice was smaller, now vulnerable. "What if we're wrong? What if Evelyn really loves you and there's some other explanation?" The question was a testament to both her intelligence and her tender heart. Even now, Maya hoped for the best in people wanted the nascent family she'd found to be real. "Then we'll figure that out too," Julian said gently. "But Maya, your instincts have been dead right so far. Don't doubt yourself now." That afternoon, the unlikely trio convened in Julian's library, surrounded by towering shelves laden with wisdom. Mrs. Albright listened, her weathered hands folded calmly in her lap, her dark eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, as Maya and Julian laid out their chilling discoveries. When they finished, she sat in quiet contemplation. "I've had my own wonderings about Miss Reed for weeks," she said at last, her English precise, carrying a faint melodic accent. "Little things. Discrepancies. She knew too much about your business, your schedules, too interested in associates, and she has a way of watching people, Mr. Thorne, when she thinks they're not looking." "What kind of watching?" Julian pressed. "The kind that measures, calculates," Mrs. Albright replied. "I've seen it before in people who are not what they seem. She studies you, studies this house, your routines. It's not how one in love observes, it's how one gathers intelligence." Maya leaned forward. "You've noticed other things too, haven't you?" Mrs. Albright graced the girl with a smile of genuine affection. "You see everything, don't you, little firefly?" "Yes. Phone calls taken in her car after visiting. Her presence during your important business calls, even when she claimed to be otherwise engaged. And yesterday I found her in your late father's private study at 6 in the morning, supposedly looking for a book." At 6 a.m. Julian's voice sharpened. She claimed insomnia a desire to read. But she was standing by your computer, Mr. Thorne, not the bookshelves. And she looked startled, guilty. A heavy silence descended. Separately, each observation was perhaps explainable. Together, they painted an undeniable portrait of systematic deception. "So what is our next move?" Mrs. Albright asked, her tone pragmatic, automatically aligning herself with them. This elegant, dignified woman-keeper of household secrets was ready for battle. "We need proof," Julian stated. "Irrefutable evidence. And we need to find out who she's working for and what their real endgame is." "I can help with that," Maya said quietly. "The surveillance devices she planted, they work both ways. If I can access their signals, I might be able to trace where they're transmitting to. Maybe even intercept what they're sending." Both adults stared. An 8-year-old proposing counter-surveillance that would challenge intelligence professionals. "Where did you learn such things, child?" Mrs. Albright asked, her voice gentle. Maya shrugged, a blush creeping up her neck. "I read a lot, and I watch you work," she said to Julian. "Your cybersecurity programs, they're not so different from apps kids use to monitor network traffic for gaming. I just adapted them." A surge of pride, quickly followed by a wave of protective anxiety, washed over Julian. "Absolutely not," he said firmly. "This is getting too dangerous for you." Maya's expression hardened her eyes, flashing with a stubborn resolve he was beginning to recognize. "I'm already involved. I found this, and I'm the only one who's been watching them without being caught." "She's right, Mr. Thorne," Mrs. Albright interjected quietly. "And more than that, she's kept herself safe in this house for months, observing what we missed. Maya isn't just smart, she's careful. She's a survivor." Julian looked between these two females, an 8-year-old with the observational prowess of a seasoned spy, and the moral compass of a sage, and a 69-year-old woman whose wisdom was as profound as her loyalty. His most trusted allies. "All right," he conceded. "But we do this together. No one takes risks alone. We watch out for each other." Maya's smile could have lit the stormiest sky. "So, we're like a real family now." The question in its simple, profound honesty caught Julian off guard. Family, not an arrangement of convenience, but something chosen, mutual, real. "Yes," he said, the word resonating with a truth he felt in his soul. "We're like a real family now." Sometimes the most unexpected alliances forge the strongest bonds. Who has stood beside you when it truly mattered? 3 days later, their meticulously crafted plans detonated. Julian stood in his office, the tiny surveillance device Mrs. Albright had expertly extracted from behind Evelyn's gifted painting, cold in his palm. His world reeled. The evidence was irrefutable, a sophisticated piece of espionage tech. Yet when he'd confronted Evelyn an hour ago expecting a confession, or at least surprise, she'd stared at him, her beautiful green eyes welling with such genuine confusion and profound hurt that he'd faltered. "You think I'm spying on you?" She'd whispered, tears tracing shimmering paths down her cheeks. "Julian, how could you even imagine such a monstrous thing?" Her performance had been flawless, so utterly convincing that for a dizzying moment he'd wondered if they'd made a ghastly mistake. Evelyn was an actress by training, a media consultant, adept at manipulating perception. But the agony in her eyes, it had seemed so real. Maybe there's another explanation. He'd found himself stammering, hating the quaver of uncertainty in his own voice. "Maybe someone else planted these to frame you to destroy us." Evelyn had collapsed into his arms, then sobbing against his chest, whispering of her terror, her gratitude for his willingness to believe in her innocence. And that's when Maya had walked in. The 8-year-old had taken one look, Evelyn, a tragic heroine in Julian's embrace, the damning device abandoned on his desk. Maya's face had gone utterly blank. Not hurt, not disappointed. Empty. Shuttered, an expression Julian remembered from their first tentative weeks together, the look of a child braced for inevitable rejection. "Maya, sweetheart," he'd begun, but she'd turned on her heel and vanished. Now, an hour later, she was nowhere to be found. Mrs. Albright searched the sprawling grounds while Julian combed every room his calls of her name, growing increasingly frantic. He found her at last in the small, dusty storage room behind the garage, amidst forgotten holiday decorations and ghostly sheet-draped furniture. She was curled tight behind a stack of boxes, her tablet clutched to her chest, her face streaked with tears she'd tried to erase. "Maya." He breathed, sinking beside her, his heart cracking at the sight of her defeated posture. "Talk to me, sweetheart." "You don't believe me?" she whispered, not looking at him. "I showed you. I explained. But you still choose her." "That's not true. I do believe you. The evidence." "Then why is she still here?" Maya's voice, barely audible, sliced through him. "Why are you letting her cry on you, tell you she's innocent when we both know she's lying?" Julian had no answer. Or rather, he had one he was ashamed to admit. Despite everything, a foolish, desperate part of him still wanted to believe Evelyn, was still susceptible to her tears, her beauty, the intoxicating illusion of their love. "Adults are complicated," he said lamely. "Sometimes we want things to be true, even when we know they're not." Maya finally met his gaze, and the profound disappointment in her brown eyes was a spear to his soul. "I thought you were different. I thought you actually listened." "I am listening. I did listen." "No," she said with the terrible, unwavering clarity of a child repeatedly let down. "You listened to my words. But you didn't believe they were more important than what you wanted. Just like all the others." She was right. He knew it. Julian Thorne, ruthless in business, decisive, logical. Yet when it came to Evelyn, to his own emotional desires, he'd wavered. Not because the evidence was weak, but because accepting it meant losing something he desperately craved. "You're right," he said, the admission a lead weight. "You're absolutely right. And I'm sorry." Maya studied his face, her gaze unnervingly astute. "Are you sorry enough to do something about it?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, Evelyn is still in our house, right now, probably planting more bugs, stealing more data. I mean, Marcus is probably getting a report from her tonight about how she fooled you again. I mean, they're going to keep doing this until they get what they came for, and then they'll disappear and leave us with nothing." Something shifted in Julian, a core of steel reasserting itself. Maya was right. While he'd wrestled with his emotions, they'd been advancing their endgame. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. "I need you to trust me," Maya said, her voice regaining its quiet strength. "Not just believe my words. Trust me. Enough to let me help catch them. I've been working on something." She opened her tablet, revealing a screen alive with data streams network traffic that mirrored his own sophisticated systems. "I've been monitoring their communications for the past 3 days. They're planning something big. Tomorrow night. Final extraction. It involves your prototype algorithm." "How do you know all this?" "Because I hacked their surveillance system," Maya stated matter-of-factly. "The same way they've been watching us, I've been watching them." Her voice hardened, imbued with a resolve no 8-year-old should possess. "And Julian, they're not just stealing your algorithm. They're planning to destroy your reputation, make it look like you sold it. Marcus has been preparing documents to make you look like a willing collaborator." The final brutal piece clicked into place. Clicked. This wasn't just industrial espionage. It was character assassination designed to annihilate him, and he'd nearly let it happen, too emotionally compromised to trust the one person fighting to save him. He looked at this extraordinary child, abandoned, betrayed, yet who'd honed her pain into a shield of perception. "I trust you," he said, and this time the words were an unbreakable vow. "What's the plan?" Maya's smile was fierce, a warrior's glint in her young eyes. "We're going to give them exactly what they want. And when they take it, we're going to be ready. The hardest lessons often arise when our hearts and minds declare war. Have you ever faced the agonizing choice between a comforting lie and a painful truth, the truth stark and damning unspooled over the next 18 hours? Mrs. Albright struck first. Sifting through financial records, she unearthed Marcus Holloway's treachery. 3 wire transfers totaling $230,000 funneled from shell companies linked to Apex Industries, Julian's most formidable competitor. "He's been selling you out from the beginning, Mr. Thorne," she stated grimly, their heads bent over her laptop in the library's dim light. "Every strategy, every client, every development timeline." But it was Maya who exposed the chilling scope of their betrayal. Using techniques that left Julian a cybersecurity expert in awe, she decrypted communications between Evelyn and her Apex handlers. "Look," Maya urged, displaying intercepted texts. "Evelyn isn't just some corporate spy. She's been with Apex for 3 years. She specializes in what they call intimate infiltration of target executives." Julian's blood turned to ice as he read Evelyn's previous assignments. A defense contractor, a pharmaceutical CEO, a tech founder. All men, all successful. All subsequently ruined their secrets, stolen their companies, imploding under mysterious scandals. "She's done this before," he whispered, numb. "It gets worse," Maya continued, her small finger scrolling. "They've been planning your destruction for almost a year. Marcus gave them your psychological profile, relationship history, even details about your parents' death. They designed Evelyn's persona specifically to appeal to you." The casual cruelty of it stole Julian's breath. Every shared glance, every whispered confidence, her admiration for his work, her tears over the house key. All scripted a performance by a woman who saw him as nothing more than a mark. The most chilling revelation was yet to come. "Tonight's extraction isn't just about stealing your prototype," Maya said, her young voice heavy with an understanding far beyond her years. "They're going to frame you for corporate espionage. Marcus has created a paper trail. Forged documents, dummy bank accounts with suspicious deposits, fabricated communications with overseas buyers, making it look like you've been selling secrets to foreign competitors for months. When the FBI raids your office tomorrow, they'll find evidence that you're a traitor." Julian sat in stunned silence, his business ruined, his reputation obliterated, federal charges prison, and Maya, left alone again, returned to the system because her adoptive father was a convicted felon. "Why?" he finally choked out. "The algorithm is valuable, but not worth this." "Because it's not just about the algorithm, Mr. Thorne." Mrs. Albright interjected, her face grave, as she reviewed more intercepted data. "Apex Industries is planning a hostile takeover of your entire company. With you disgraced, your stock will plummet. They'll buy controlling interest for pennies on the dollar. It's brilliant in a horrible way." Maya added, her analytical clarity unwavering. "They get your tech, your company, your market share, your clients, all for the price of one bribed employee and one very skilled actress." Julian looked at these 2 extraordinary women, his unlikely family. Mrs. Albright, whose loyalty was a bedrock. Maya, whose courage had pierced his blindness. They depended on him. He would not fail them. "Not if we stop them first," he declared, the hard edge of the empire builder returning to his voice. "Mrs. Albright, can you get copies of everything Marcus has falsified? I want to know exactly what they plan to plant." "Already working on it," she replied, a glint of steel in her smile. "I've been his assistant for 5 years. I know where he keeps his skeletons." And Maya. Julian turned to the girl who was now his most vital ally. How much of their communications can you intercept without them knowing all of it? She said confidently. They're using encrypted channels, but they're not expecting their own surveillance equipment to monitor them. I can see every message, every plan, every contingency. Then here's what we do, Julian said, a predatory thrill, the thrill of the chess master regaining control, coursing through him. We let them execute their plan, perfectly. But when they reach for the prize, they're going to find we've set a trap of our own. What kind of trap? Maya asked, her eyes bright. Julian's smile was sharp as a razor. The kind that turns predators into prey. Tomorrow night, when they think they're destroying me, we're going to destroy them, and we're going to make sure the whole world knows exactly what they tried to do. The game, he realized, was far from over. It was just beginning. Justice rarely arrives uninvited, but it's always a battle worth waging. When have you stood against those who underestimated your resolve? The following evening descended with the palpable weight of destiny. Julian's house, so recently a haven, now felt like a meticulously dressed stage for a high-stakes drama. Evelyn, oblivious, moved with her usual languid grace, preparing for what she believed was her triumphant final act. She'd played the concerned girlfriend to perfection all day, her impending product launch, stress a convenient cover. She had no idea her every word was recorded, every move, monitored every signal from her hidden devices intercepted by an 8-year-old girl who'd mastered espionage out of necessity. The extraction begins at 11 p.m., Maya whispered to Julian as they passed in the hall. Marcus will trigger a fire alarm at your office building as a distraction. While security is diverted, Evelyn will download the algorithm and transmit it. The frame-up is already in motion. The FBI received an anonymous tip. They're planning a raid at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Julian marveled at their enemy's intricate planning. It would have been flawless but for one unforeseen variable, Maya. At 10:30 p.m., Julian made his move. I'm heading to the office, he announced to Evelyn, who was curled on the couch, the picture of domestic bliss. Just want to triple-check everything before tomorrow. Evelyn's eyes flickered excitement. Of course, darling. So important. Actually, Julian feigned a sudden thought. Why don't you come with me moral support? For a split second, her mask slipped. Calculation warred with her loving facade. I'd love to, she purred. But I'm a bit tired. Besides, you work better without me distracting you. A sultry smile. Probably right, Julian agreed, kissing her forehead. Back in a few hours. He left, ensuring she heard his car depart. Then he circled back through the woods, slipping into the house via a basement entrance Mrs. Albright had left ajar. From a hidden observation post in the disused maids' quarters, Julian, Maya, and Mrs. Albright watched Evelyn transform. The moment she believed him gone, the loving girlfriend vanished. A focused, predatory professional emerged. She retrieved a sophisticated laptop from a cache in the guest bathroom connected to Julian's network and began a well-rehearsed data infiltration. She's good, Maya whispered a note of grudging admiration. Bypassing protocols. She's studied your system for months. Not good enough, Julian replied grimly. She's downloading from the decoy server we set up. Every file is worthless, or worse for her, embedded with tracking malware. Meanwhile, Mrs. Albright monitored Marcus's communications. He was at Julian's office preparing the fire alarm, his texts to Apex, exuding the confidence of a man on the brink of immense wealth. At 11:15 p.m., chaos erupted at Julian's office building as alarms blared. Simultaneously, Evelyn completed her download, transmitting the stolen files. Marcus moved to plant the fabricated evidence. They didn't know their every action was being broadcast live to a secure government server, federal agents meticulously recording what would become a landmark case of corporate espionage. At 11:45 p.m., Evelyn received her cue. Package delivered. Initiate Phase 2. Phase 2. Erase all traces, plant final incriminating evidence against Julian, and vanish. By morning, she'd be en route to a non-extradition country rich. Instead, she looked up into the faces of Julian, Maya, and Mrs. Albright, emerging from the shadows. "Hello, Evelyn," Julian said calmly. "Or should I use your real name, Rebecca Santos, age 31, wanted by the FBI for industrial espionage across 4 states." The transformation was chilling. Love evaporated, replaced by cold, calculating rage. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into," she hissed, her accent entirely different. "This is bigger than your little company, bigger than your naive world." "You're right," Julian agreed. "It is bigger. That's why the FBI has been recording everything for the past 6 hours. Why your buyers are federal agents, and why Marcus Holloway is currently being arrested at my office." Evelyn's face went white. "Impossible. We monitored everything." "You controlled every variable," Maya interjected, her quiet confidence unshakable, "except one. You never considered an 8-year-old foster kid might be smarter than your entire operation." Evelyn's glare towards Maya was pure venom. "You little—" "I wouldn't finish that sentence," Julian warned, his voice like ice. "You're addressing the person who saved my life and exposed your criminal network. Show some respect." The wail of sirens grew louder, federal agents surrounding the house. The trap months in the making had sprung not on Julian, but on those who sought his ruin. The most satisfying victories often belong to the underestimated. Justice sometimes arrives in the most unexpected packages. 6 weeks later, Julian stood in the courthouse lobby. Marcus Holloway, his former CFO, his supposed friend, was led away in handcuffs, facing decades in prison. The man had looked right through him, a stranger. Betrayal, Julian had learned, carved deep. Healing, he was discovering, came from unexpected sources. "He looked smaller than I remembered," Maya observed quietly from beside him. At 8, she was the star witness in a federal investigation that had unraveled a multi-state corporate espionage ring. Her testimony, clear, detailed, technologically sophisticated, was hailed by prosecutors. "People usually do when you see them clearly," Mrs. Albright replied, adjusting Maya's new dress. An hour ago, the adoption had been finalized. Maya Vance was now officially and forever Maya Thorne. Julian clutched the adoption certificate. The legal document paled in comparison to the emotional truth forged in crisis. Family wasn't blood, but a choice, a bond of trust and love proven through action. "So what happens now?" Maya asked, slipping her small hand into his. The gesture, once hesitant, was now natural, secure. "Now," Julian said, his heart full, "we go home, to our home." The house felt different. Cleansed. The surveillance gear was gone, but more, the very air felt lighter, honest. They'd redecorated together, the 3 of them, filling the spaces with things that reflected their true selves. Maya's drawings hung beside fine art. Mrs. Albright's family photos graced the mantelpiece. "I have something for you," Julian told Maya in the living room over hot chocolate. He handed her a small wrapped box. Inside, a device resembling a sophisticated smartphone, a prototype security scanner he'd developed specifically for her, incorporating her innovative detection techniques. "It's yours," he said. "Your invention, based on your insights. I filed the patents in your name." Maya stared, then looked at him, tears welling. "Mine, really. Really yours. You're the youngest patent holder in cybersecurity history. When you turn 18, the licensing fees will fund any college you choose." But it wasn't the money. It was the recognition, the validation. "There's something else," Mrs. Albright said, gently producing an envelope. A letter from the FBI's Cyber Crimes Division, formally thanking Maya, recommending her for a civilian commendation. "They want to know," Julian explained, a proud smile playing on his lips, "if you'd be interested in consulting work when you're older. Apparently your methods impressed some very important people." Maya looked at the letter, then at the two adults who were her chosen family, and beamed. "Will you help me write back to them?" "Of course," Julian said. "Everything. Together. From now on." As evening settled, they talked of school vacations, security upgrades. But beneath the ordinary, a profound current of connection flowed. They'd been tested by betrayal by those who'd weaponized trust and love. They'd not just survived, but emerged stronger, bound by crisis in ways good times never could. "I love you both," Maya said as Mrs. Albright tucked her in her voice, simple, direct, fearless. "We love you too, darling," Mrs. Albright replied, kissing her forehead. "Forever and always." Julian watched from the doorway. 6 months ago, he was a lonely man who'd adopted a child from obligation. Tonight he was part of a family chosen through fire. Love, he'd learned, wasn't a passive event, but an active verb demonstrated daily. Trust wasn't given blindly, but earned, proven, honored. He reflected on the lesson from an 8-year-old girl. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the most vital truths. The people you least expect to save you often become the family you never knew you needed. Real family is built by choosing each other again and again, especially when it's hardest. Who has chosen you, and whom have you chosen in return? 1 year later, Julian Thorne stood in his home office, the same room where a small girl's whisper had shattered his world, only to rebuild it stronger. He watched Maya, now 9, confidently installing security software on Mrs. Albright's new laptop. The sun, unfiltered by secrets, illuminated a space transformed from a spy's target to a hub of innovation. Framed articles adorned the walls. Forbes on the 8-year-old who revolutionized corporate security, People magazines, the family that fought back. But his most treasured item was a simple, framed, handwritten note from Maya on his desk. "Thank you for finally listening. Love, your daughter." Your daughter. Not adopted. Not foster. Daughter. The distinction resonated deeper than any legal decree. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Mrs. Albright asked from the doorway, her voice laced with gentle concern. Julian nodded. Today marked 1 year since Evelyn's arrest, since the Apex conspiracy unraveled, since their family was forged. It was also the day he'd chosen to make an announcement. "Ladies," he began, gathering the courage he'd learned to summon, not by suppressing emotion, but by embracing it. "I have something important to tell you." Maya looked up, her brown eyes bright with curiosity. Taller, more confident, she still possessed that unnerving intelligence, now rooted in security, not fear. "I've decided to step back from day-to-day operations at Thorne Industries," Julian continued. "I'm promoting Sarah Chen to CEO. I'm going to focus on R&D, specifically technology that helps protect families like ours." Mrs. Albright smiled knowingly. "You're going to build better home security systems, among other things. More importantly, I want to be present for this family, to be the kind of father who hears his daughter the first time." Maya's face lit up. "Does this mean you'll have time to help with my new scanner prototype?" "It means I'll have time for whatever matters to you," Julian replied. "School projects, science fairs, teaching you to drive, scaring away boys in about, 20 years. 20 years, Maya laughed. "Seems excessive." 30 then. I'm flexible." Mrs. Albright shook her head, fondly exasperated. But her eyes, watching the easy banter, held deep approval. This was the genuine relationship she'd hoped for. "There's something else," Julian said, his tone more serious. "I've been thinking about what we learned, how easily people are fooled by those who prey on trust and loneliness. I want to do something about that." He produced a business plan, pages of proposals for something new. "I want to start a foundation, he explained. An organization to help victims of confidence schemes, romance scams, corporate espionage, to provide resources, training for law enforcement education, to recognize warning signs. What would you call it? Maya asked, already devouring the proposal. The Maya Foundation, Julian said simply. Named after the person who taught me wisdom isn't about age or experience, but about paying attention to truth, however inconvenient. Maya stared speechless, the idea that her name, her experience, would protect others overwhelming her in the best way. I think, Mrs. Albright said quietly, that sounds like exactly the right way to honor what you've all learned. Over the following months, as the foundation took shape, Julian discovered Maya's lessons extended far beyond cybersecurity. She'd shown him that true listening was the bedrock of all meaningful relationships, that trust was built through consistent action, that family was about who chose to stand beside you. Most importantly, she taught him that the most profound truths often come from the smallest voices, the overlooked, the underestimated, who see clearly because they haven't yet learned to doubt their own perceptions. On the first anniversary of the Maya Foundation, they received a letter. A woman in Ohio, whose elderly mother was saved from a romance scam by information from their programs. The would-be victim recognized the signs, contacted authorities, kept her savings. One more family safe, Maya said softly, reading the letter aloud at dinner. One more person who listened to that little voice inside that says something's not right. Speaking of little voices, Julian said, what is yours telling you about your future, Maya? What do you want to do with all that brilliance? Maya considered. I want to keep learning. About technology, about people, about protecting what matters. And I want to help other kids who don't have families yet find theirs, the way I found mine. A perfect plan, Mrs. Albright said warmly, and you'll always have us. As they cleared dishes, a cherished ritual, Julian reflected on his transformed definition of success. A year ago, profit margins, market share. Now Maya's laughter, Mrs. Albright's contentment, the knowledge of something real and lasting built together. The families helped, the young people inspired. That night, tucking Maya in, she looked up, her wise brown eyes bright with a hope that had weathered too much too early. Thank you, she said. For what, sweetheart? For listening, for believing me, for becoming the kind of father who hears what his daughter is trying to tell him. Julian kissed her forehead, his heart overflowing. Thank you, he whispered back, for teaching me how to listen. Outside, the world spun on, but inside their home, three souls bound by choice and crisis slept peacefully, protected not just by sophisticated systems, but by the profound security of being known, valued, and loved. And in the morning they would wake ready for whatever came, secure in the knowledge that some families are forged in fire, strengthened by choice, and that the most powerful force is a small voice speaking truth to those wise enough to hear. Your voice matters no matter how small it might seem. Your instincts are valuable, your observations important, your truth worth sharing. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember they're seen, heard, and valued. Like this story if you believe in the power of chosen family, and subscribe for more tales that celebrate the strength found in unexpected places. Sometimes the person who saves us is the one we least expect, and sometimes that person is ourselves.